Morning, everyone. My name's Mike Rigby. I'm the Executive Lead Member for Planning, Economic Development, Assets and Digital, and I'll be chairing this subcommittee today. Welcome to everyone. Today's meeting will be run using the webcasting system via Microsoft Teams. Committee members and key officers are physically present in the Luttrell Room at County Hall. Other elected members and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or to observe. This meeting is being webcast and therefore other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. The agenda pack with papers is available via ModGov or directly from the Council website from the link which was sent out to members. When you're invited to speak, could you clearly state who you are for the benefit of anybody who is listening to the meeting so that they can identify who is speaking. I'd like also to advise those present that the meeting is being audio recorded. Finally, as agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. Josh, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Graham Oakes, who's unwell.
Okay, item 2, minutes from the previous meeting. We'd like to confirm the accuracy of the minutes held on 8th of October 2024. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes, or are we good to sign those off? Thank you, Bill. Everyone happy? Good. We'll accept those minutes.
It's from February, sorry.
It's February, is it?
Yeah.
I was thinking that was a long time ago for a meeting, isn't it? February. Okay, so do you want to give me the date of that, just so we're clear?
Yeah. 11th.
The 11th of February 2025. Those are the minutes that we're signing, just to be clear. Thank you. Any declarations of interest from anyone? Bill.
On item 6, can I just remind members that I am the divisional member for Wilstock, and just to have that noted in the minutes. I've long been in favour of that in the public, but I'm satisfied that I can maintain a dispassionate view when it comes to the agenda item.
Understood, Bill. That's noted. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Item 4, public question time. As far as I'm aware, there are no public questions. Anything coming late?
No public questions, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll move on to item 5 in that case. The Taunton Waterway Strategy and Guidance. I'd like to invite Jenny Clifford to introduce the report, please.
Good morning. Thank you. Jenny Clifford, Taunton Garden Town Implementation Manager. If you wouldn't mind just bearing with me a second while I pull up the presentation. Okay, thank you, members. You recall that this is an item that has been before you previously in draft. We've now been out to public consultation on the waterway strategy and guidance. And in terms very briefly of this as a piece of work, it's very much on the back of the vision for Taunton as a garden town. And the intention is very much to help bring forward part of that vision, which talks about seeking to reinvigorate the town through the waterways, placing the waterways back into the heart of the town. And as we all know, it's very much part of the historic development of Taunton. So the intention was very much around developing a strategic plan and a strategy for the waterways, a management framework, but also a way of informing planning decisions through guidance, particularly on some of our brownfield sites which are currently vacant, adjacent to the waterways, and quite critical, I think, going forward to regeneration opportunities. So in terms of the study area, it was taken to the west from the Silk Mills Park and Ride site, and then through to the eastern side as far as the M5, incorporating both the Bridgewater and Taunton Canal as well as the River Tone, but also the Tone tributaries within the Garden Town area of Taunton as well. And the plan that I've got up on the screen here just demonstrates really the wider Tone catchment, the significant size of that Tone catchment in relation to this as a fairly focused piece of work within that study area. In terms of contents and outputs of this particular piece of work, we've got everything from projects and prioritisation of investment. We've got also a series of intended outcomes from investment, the intent being to maximise the benefits of any monetary investment into the waterways to achieve multiple positive outcomes. We have a character and design guidance, which is intended to be used for planning purposes, as well as a management and a maintenance plan. So in terms of that public consultation process, it ran for 6 weeks from mid-October to the end of January. And as you can see from the slide on the screen here, overall we had about 77 responses in total across a variety of different means. As you can see from social media, email, the questionnaire in the portal as well. But we also held some exhibitions at the Dean House reception area and particularly the library as well. In summary, there was significant support from those responding for the proposals, a definite wish to engage further. There was quite a lot of additional information, lots of comments that we had on the proposals, a lot of information that we weren't necessarily aware of before coming into that consultation process. But quite importantly, little fundamental disagreement to the proposals. I'm not intending to go through this slide in any detail, but I've just extracted from the consultation document a few of the charts that we've got. So indicating, first of all, main waterways issues is the one on the left-hand side. So water quality was a big one for respondents. I don't think that will come as a surprise to people. But also around management and maintenance of the waterways, but also things like flood flows, water attenuation. Looking at the middle one, I've used this as an example of the extent of agreement with the proposed outcomes from investment, the intent being to use those to evaluate and prioritise future investments. This is the one for community factors, and as you can see, a significant amount of agreement and strong agreement. And then on the right-hand side, that one there is to do with agreement with proposed strategic goals. And I've just selected the one there around the conveyance of water and to reduce flood risk. And again, the very strong indication of agreement and also strongly agree on that one. So in terms of the responses themselves, just very briefly, one of the main proposals within the document is to develop a linear park concept through the main waterways corridor. And that as a proposal did receive very strong support. And this is about very much creating an integrated vision for our waterways. The proposed public realm enhancements, with reference, as you've got on the slide there, to Goodlands Gardens, French Weir, Firpool Weir, were very much welcomed. And there was also very broad support for the individual standalone projects. And they range from everything from some of our strategic flood risk projects to more targeted proposals. It could be around some suggestions at perhaps sort of French Weir, at Firpool Weir, etc. Where there was less positive response, it was more neutral rather than disagreement. And I think there was a greater degree of uncertainty around things like the potential for floating business units, public art installations, etc. I think we're very aware that there's multiple users of the waterways, and I think one of the tasks going forward will be to reconcile the different users. I mention that because in terms of the potential for floating business units, there was some concern from some of the recreation users of the Tone to affect things like, the width for rowing, etc. So we had very much a strong support for an integrated approach to our waterways. There were a series of key issues identified. I've already mentioned flood and water quality. There was a considerable response in terms of biodiversity and habitats, and there are proposals within the strategy to enhance biodiversity at key areas of the waterways within the study area. Connectivity, so using the water itself, but also the banks and the areas associated with the waterways for walking, cycling potential was quite a strong response that we had. But also navigation. The desire, there was certainly an ambition that's come forward to see a return of navigation to the centre of Taunton, and particularly between the canal and the River Tone through Fireport Lock. There are a series of technical challenges to be overcome in order to achieve that, but I think one thing that is clear is that there is an ambition, particularly by other partner authorities, other interested stakeholders around that. So I can see some further liaison working in partnership, perhaps going forward, to look at those issues in more detail. And then second batch of key issues, very much a call for further engagement and collaboration. So a clear path wanted towards more partnership working. We also had a particular request to recognise in the document more broadly the potential economic benefits that can arise from the regeneration of our waterways. And I referenced at the beginning the wider catchment of the River Tone, and we had some very strong response, and understandably so, about continuing to view the Tone at a catchment level. And also a lot of the work and a lot of the proposals that are being considered further up the catchment. And this is around things like natural water management. This is some of the more habitat creation, etc. So in other words, looking at the Tone as a whole rather than just that small study area. The renewable energy potential of water within both the canal and also the river was something that was referenced in the responses, as was also the fact that there is an intrinsic value, an intrinsic heritage value of our waterways as well, and recognising that more as an attraction within the document. So as a response to the consultations, there has been a series of updates to the document, which are summarised within the report and the appendix. The work itself was grant funded by the Taunton Garden Town Capacity Fund. So this is from MHCLG, so has not been funded at a cost to the council. And another item I was just going to reference was we did undertake some screening under the Strategic Environmental Assessment and Habitats Regulations Assessment, and it was concluded that neither full SEA or HRA were required. So in conclusion, members, the recommendation before you is to now continue and to adopt the Waterways Strategy and Guidance as a material planning consideration. You have the wording of the recommendation in front of you, and also to approve the supporting management and maintenance plan document. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jenny. From my perspective, this is a really important piece of work. I think for too long, Taunton has turned its back on the River Tone in particular, but also the other waterways. I quite like what Morrison's did 30 years ago. That respected the river. I think the Coal Orchard development more recently has done the same, but there are still lots of opportunities, I think, where we can make the River Tone the centre of the town rather than something that's been ignored as it has been in the past. Our waterways, I think, are an opportunity, but also a threat in terms of flooding. So it's good to see that work brought together in one guidance document. My one question is, how do we repair Firepool Lock? Is that something we need to work with the Canal and River Trust?
Thank you. In a very short answer, yes, it is. There are various technical stakeholders that would need to be liaised with in detail. I mentioned a series of technical challenges associated with it. This is where I see partnership working being absolutely vital to achieve an enhancement of that lock area.
Thank you, Jenny. I'll throw it open to other members of the committee to speak. Bill?
Yeah, thank you. I'd first of all like to echo the comments of Councillor Rigby about the quality of this document and the importance of it to Taunton. I was very similar to him in my line of questioning about connectivity on the waterway. I'm very conscious that at the other end of the Bridgewater and Taunton Canal, we have a town deal project, which is the renovation of Bridgewater docks, and it would be great to see some sort of linkage between those two projects. You've mentioned technical challenges at the Firepool end. I'd be interested to understand whether those technical challenges are insurmountable. Those of us who've been around long enough will remember a time when we were promised that the Somerset levels would be the new Norfolk Broads, which was some considerable time ago, and that's been a vision that's not been realised, and I wouldn't want us to raise expectations beyond what is feasible at the moment, as well as wanting to be ambitious, that this could be a real benefit to our visitor economy as well. So just interested in understanding those technical challenges more. Are we in the realm of fantasy, or are we in the realm of reality, but not yet?
To be honest, Councillor Evans, I don't think we are yet in a position to provide a detailed answer to that. I think feasibility work is definitely needed in order to understand in more detail the nature of those challenges, but also the potential cost of resolving them. And again, this is where working with the technical stakeholders is going to be imperative.
Thank you. I'd particularly like to highlight the Canal Boat Centre at Monsall Lock as being a business that's been very successful in being able to operate using the potential of waterways, and I think there is considerable economic development potential in this area. And if the Bridgewater Docks project is going to be successful, I think it needs to be able to harness that connectivity as well. And I would very much welcome that further work and assurance.
Thank you very much, Bill. And I'll echo your comments about Monsall Lock, which is a regular stop on mine and Mrs. Rigby's cycle across the levels.
It is a mic match, so I do expect you to come and buy me cake.
I'll make sure I notify you in future, sir. Thank you. Any other comments in the room? Nick?
Yeah, just echoing from the Bridgewater Docks project, there's clearly information there which it won't be directly applicable, but for example, we'll have reasonably up-to-date estimates of what it costs to restore lock gates. Canals and Rivers Trust, you know, a key sort of partner of that scheme. We know they haven't got any money, but they do have engineers and they do have, you know, expertise. So again, harnessing some work in kind, because the commercial elements at the Bridgewater end, particularly supporting, it would be day trips really, but that tourism element, the advantage is you've got Taunton at one end, Bridgewater at another end. It's a short stretch of canal, but you've got places and real opportunities. So I think we just make sure that those discussions with particularly Canals and Rivers Trust and their responsibilities on the canal, you know, we join up, and now this document, when it's adopted, gives it real teeth at this end as well. Canals and Rivers Trust extract water, so they take an income out of the canal, but they also don't, it doesn't need to be maintained to navigable standard, but this all puts emphasis on saying if you take income out of the canal, perhaps you should be maintaining it to a navigable standard, because we have ambitions at both ends to bring it back into fuller use. So we just make sure that the two, you know, very much talking to each other.
Great, thank you for that, Nick. I can't see any hands online. Sing out now if you want to say anything. No, okay, we will move on to the recommendations in that case. Can we have those back up on screen again? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Planning and Transport Policy Executive Subcommittee agrees to A, adopt the Taunton Waterways Strategy and Guidance as a material planning consideration for the preparation of master plans, pre-application advice, assessing planning applications and any other development management purposes within the study area, and B, approve the supporting management and maintenance plan document. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Evans. Seconder, Councillor Wilkins, thank you very much. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you for that, Jenny. We will move on to item 6, which is the new school at Wilstock, and Phil Curd will take us through the report.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Refer to a report that starts at page 547 in your pack, and it relates to the request for capital funding to deliver a new primary school at Wilstock in Bridgewater. The Education Places team is requesting SIL funding from Area North for the delivery of a new 7-class primary school with early years provision in South Bridgewater on the Wilstock development to meet the local authority's statutory duty to provide sufficient school places. Housing developments totaling 511 dwellings on the allocated site, known as Bridgewater Gateway, are expected to commence in 26-27. There are forecast to be very few primary school places available within statutory walking distance of the site. So our request today is for the subcommittee to approve the release of £7,742,000 of SIL funding from Area North for the purposes of delivering the new primary school and nursery. Just by way of context, whilst the birth rate has been going down in recent years, we now have data from health that we're not normally able to access, which tells us that the birth rate in Somerset has increased in 2024 by 6.7%, and that in every age group in the early years community, that each of those year groups has increased by at least 2 or 3%. So not only has our birth rate increased, and we will see that published by the Office of National Statistics later this year, but we are seemingly getting lots of inward migration, and our 1s, our 2s, our 3s and our 4s have all increased as well. And also additional context, North Newton, North Peverton and Somerset Bridge primary schools were all oversubscribed for this coming September, and we've had to create additional capacity at Hamp Infant School in Bridgewater to mitigate that impact. So our schools in this area of Bridgewater are full.
Thank you very much for that, Phil. I think we've given this a good kick around in the past, but there's obviously an opportunity for members to ask questions now. I'll just say that all this seems to be contributing to the inexorable rise of North Petherton as the centre of the universe. I fully expect to see an application for it to become the county town before long. And no doubt when we have a combined mayoral authority, that'll be the seat of power for that too. Any serious questions on the subject?
Thank you. My understanding was it already was the seat of power, but let's not examine that too closely. Yeah, so there's been a significant amount of housing developments in the area between Bridgewater and North Petherton over a significant period of time. We've seen Somerset Bridge School move and then expand significantly. We've seen North Petherton have an extra 60 places created to be able to secure capacity there for the expansion of Wilstock. And now we're seeing further expansion between North Petherton and Stockmore and Wilstock with the Bridgewater Gateway development. It was always a surprise in the local plan to see that as an industrial usage slash residential, because I never for a moment thought that residential would come in that allocated parcel, and I now see that the business is associated with Hinkley Point, which was the which the rationale for the Bridgewater Gateway will include a Lidl, a Domino's and a Greggs, as well as the existing Costa, all of which are of course welcome as local businesses, but I'm not quite sure of their association with the Hinkley Point development. Nevertheless, we have a situation where we have particularly Blocklock as a developer who can build out sites at a particular rate due to their methods of construction and excellent relationship with IKEA. And we need to be well prepared for that development to take place. And I think that's really, really important that we have the place sufficiency for the primary children. I've already had discussions with officers around the preschool capacity and how the potential Wilstock hub, which would go on a neighbouring site, might work with the Wilstock primary school. So I'm satisfied that we're starting to move towards preschool sufficiency. My question, and I hope Phil will be able to answer it off the cuff, and apologise for not giving you advance notice, but with this significant increase of inward migration, are we seeing significant pressure on secondary school places in the Bridgewater catchment areas? And is there a sufficiency plan to accommodate that? Would that be the new school at Creech, which I believe is not going to be an all-through school, or would that be through the new Haygrove school at the Queenswood site?
Thank you, Bill. In short, we were seeing some emerging capacity at secondary phase, but the number of late applications means that all of the latent capacity in those schools will be filled. We've also run out of capacity in Burnham and Highbridge, so King Alfred's is oversubscribed at year 7 this year, and we are likely to be transporting those children down into Bridgewater to use what capacity we have left. In terms of future expansion in Bridgewater, the new Haygrove school will be built in a way that allows us to extend it at some point in the future. Robert Blake has been recently expanded and is growing into that new capacity. And we also have a building at Chiltern Trinity School, which is called the Jean Rees. So that was handed to the school when we delivered Poldenbauer Special School. But the school didn't officially expand its capacity. So if we needed to, we could have conversations with that multi-academy trust and expand the school to 1,200 places, but it's not required just yet. But the infrastructure is there, and it would require a relatively light touch refurbishment.
Thank you, Phil. That's a really helpful response. Do we have any timetable on the build out of the Creech or through Academy?
In terms of the Monkton Heathfield 2 project, that is still being discussed and whether it is affordable for the local authority to deliver a secondary provision on that site, given the cost and the viability of the development. So we're looking at whether we mitigate that demand in other ways.
Thank you for that answer. I'm very aware of the sufficiency issues in Taunton. Which we used to have 5 schools in Taunton, and now we've got 4, and now we probably need 5, which is an interesting historical perspective. But it does concern me, the secondary sufficiency. I know a number of parents in the Taunton area were disappointed with the outcome of the secondary place allocations this year. I think it's important that we track those numbers very, very carefully to ensure that we've got that sufficiency going forwards, but also we've got the quality as well. We also don't know the impact yet of the increased financial commitment of the 3 major independent schools in Taunton to pay VAT and so on. So there could well be a knock-on unexpected impact for that. And I think that look at planning sufficiency of educational infrastructure is incredibly important when we go forward. So this paper, I've gone way off topic here. This paper incredibly welcome, but that educational sufficiency, I think, is going to be a really important challenge for this council over the next 10 to 15 years. And I really hope we're all over it.
Thank you, Bill. Good bit of back and forth there. Really interesting information, particularly about birth rates, which is something which I wasn't aware of until reasonably recently. It's been pretty flat or declining for some time, so interesting to see that it's moving upwards and in such a large way as well. Bill.
Offline, it would be really interesting to see the geographical distribution of that birth rate increase. So that data is available, but I appreciate that's getting into the weeds and way off topic.
We'll do that in another forum. Richard.
A very interesting discussion about birth rates and what have you. I'm just going to change the subject very dramatically and just in the estimated cost of delivering this school. I'm looking on page 551, paragraph 17. And then when I consider paragraph 18, I'm concerned that just a 10% variation would push us past the unallocated SIL levels. What contingency is there in place to deal with variations of cost, or is that built into the estimated value?
Thank you, Richard. Yes, each of the projects. So if we look at paragraph 18 and we make reference to the £18.3 million of unallocated SIL funding, that's going to two projects. So Willstock Primary School and the expansion of Puriton Primary School. Both have been costed within the 8.3 million, and both projects have contingency fund built into them. So the overall project cost includes a contingency part of somewhere between 7 and 10%. So we're confident we can deliver the projects within the available budget, and we are seeing construction costs coming down on school builds.
Thank you, Phil. Any comments online? No? Okay, in that case, we'll move to the recommendation. Oh,
sorry.
Liz, hello.
Yeah. Did I just hear Phil Curd say construction costs coming down, or have I misheard that?
Phil.
You did, Liz. Some of our construction costs are coming down because of the modern methods of construction, and that we're able to deliver those more efficiently. We are seeing some of our construction costs coming down. There's also, as a council, the consideration of to what standard we build our schools, in respect that the last primary school we delivered at Orchard Grove was Passive House.
Yeah.
And we know that brings a 15% premium on our build costs. And as a council, we need to determine whether we want to hit that specification going forwards or reduce that cost element.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I recall the conversation about Passive House or the next standard down, which would allow us to do more, better, but not entirely best. So I welcome that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. I guess this is always a question of balance, isn't it? I mean, we like what's happened at Orchard Grove. It does cost more money, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of the fact that spending perhaps the least amount of money doesn't always work. If we recall the first effort at rebuilding Haygrove, for example. I'll leave that there. Unless Bill wants to say something.
Yeah, just for clarity, that wasn't Somerset Council.
No, absolutely.
And I think it's important that we get that clarified, just in case anybody is on the call and doesn't understand the context there.
A wise intervention. Thank you, Bill. So the recommendation is that the Planning and Transport Policy Executive Subcommittee approves the release of £7,742,000 in SIL funding from Area North to education for the purposes of delivering a new 1FE primary school, 7 classes and nursery. Can I have a proposal for that, please? Bill, and seconded by Councillor Wilkins. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Splendid. Thank you very much for that, everyone. We will move on to item 7, the Taunton Flood Alleviation Improvement Scheme Community Infrastructure Levy Request. And Anne Rhodes is going to take us through the report. Hello, Anne.
Hello, members. Good morning. So the report before you today is a request for SIL funding from the Area West for the completion of the detailed design of one of the Taunton Strategic Flood Alleviation Improvement Scheme projects, which is called Taunton Town Centre Option 5. We weren't really thinking when we were giving these names, were we? But this, better known as the left bank of the Tone, the full length of the project is between Freeshill and Town Bridge. To date, ahead of drawing down SIL, we've used other grant funding secured. That includes Wessex Levy, Somerset Rivers Authority grant, Homes England Garden Town Capacity Fund, capital funding, and those have been prioritised for the design phases of TTC 5. Just to make you aware that we have secured some external funding for the construction element of the contract. That comes from the Department for Education and also from DEFRA's Flood Defence Granting Aid. But when we get to construction, this is about completing the detailed design. We have a collaborative agreement with the Environment Agency, which is progressing this project between us. We have with TTC 5, it's one of a number of projects. You heard about the Taunton Waterway Strategy earlier, and flood risk is mentioned in that, and these projects are reflected in that. TTC 5 in particular provides flood protection to North Town, Firepool, the Bridge Street area, and various strategic services and infrastructure that are in that location, and the Resilience Highways network in that location. It also provides 1 in 100 year flood protection for the Taunton Town Centre brownfield regeneration sites at Firepool, Greenbrook Terrace and Wood Street. Wood Street, you probably know more familiar, is the former Pound Stretcher site, which a developer is bringing forward a proposal on. And as I mentioned, key services and facilities like the police station, care homes in the area, the BT exchange in particular. We've completed a lot of work to date, surveys and assessments, and signed off on outline design. There's also been some community engagement already completed. There was a general public drop-in session in March last year, and we've just completed some engagement work with North Town Primary School. That was a collective engagement with ourselves, the Environment Agency and Somerset Rivers Authority. Great fun, I can highly recommend it. We had lots of flood related games, but also talked about flood scheme and what it meant for Taunton, and the flood resilient house they have. So the children thoroughly enjoyed pouring water all over a house for their part of their engagement. Yes, and as mentioned, we've signed off the outline designs. We're now progressing to the detailed design. So that is construction drawings, tender packs, and all the relevant consents and permissions that are required. I would just highlight to you that this element of the flood scheme can progress under permitted development rights. But of course, we are still required to get various flood risk activity permits and permits associated with protected species in the area. We're coming to you today to ask that in relation to the drawdown of SIL, you agree to delegate the authority to the Executive Director for Community, Place and Economy in consultation with the lead member, Councillor Rigby, to draw down up to a maximum of £860,000 when the final design phase costs, final detailed design costs are known. That is our estimation at the moment for the completion of the detailed design works. I'm happy to take any questions you may have about this or the wider flood schemes that this links into.
Thank you very much, Anne. Any questions from members in the room? Richard.
I'm just keen to understand how this fits in with the Taunton Waterways Strategy guidance. Maybe a question for Jenny. I don't know.
Wants to have a go.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. I think we might be doing a little bit of a double act here. The Waterways Strategy is very much aware of all these strategic flood projects. It incorporates several of them within the strategy. That's why I would say they're very much aligned as proposals and documents.
Any other questions online? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Anne. We'll move to the recommendation. The Planning and Transport Policy Executive Subcommittee approves to agree the delegation of authority to the Executive Director, Community, Place and Economy in consultation with the lead member for Economic Development Planning and Assets, to allocate funding to TTC 5 up to a maximum of £860,000 when final design phase costs are confirmed. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Richard, and a seconder. Thank you very much, Bill. All those in favour? Splendid. Well, that takes us through item 7 into item 8, the forward plan, and Alison's going to run us through the plan.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see the forward plan is on page 567 of your pack. And that sets out what we understand is going to come forward in the next few months. We haven't got confirmed dates, of course, yet, because we don't know what those dates of the committee meeting will be. But that's a pretty comprehensive list. But can I take this opportunity just to update you where we are with the Mendip Local Plan Part 2 review? As members will recall, that went to examination. The hearings actually finished on the 13th of March of this year. We've had confirmation from the inspector that there will not be a post-hearing advice note, and that he will be confirming, hopefully shortly, the main modifications which were proposed and were discussed at the examination hearings. Once we get confirmation as to the format of those main modifications, we will be going out for a statutory consultation period, and then any comments that are received as a result of that consultation will go back to the inspector to consider before he finalises the report. We're hoping, therefore, we'll get a final report on the examination in June or July this year, and then it will be coming to full council for the plan to be adopted by full council. So that's the timetable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Alison. Any comments on the forward plan from anyone in the room or online? No? Okay, well, we'll note those items and look forward to seeing them come forward later in the year. Nothing to vote on that particular item, so I think that brings us to the end of the meeting, and we have 3/4 of an hour of our lives back. Thank you very much, everyone.